just want to welcome everybody to the podcast today. This is Beyond Ray, women-led conversations on industrial design. And today, Ginger, Margaret, and myself are just going to reflect on the year we've had so far and talk about some really impactful moments and some nice interactions that we've had with you all, as well as start mapping out where we think this podcast is heading and how we can continue to be of service to this community and pushing ourselves to grow and keep getting curious.
Yeah, and welcome everyone in New Year. We thought that January is a good moment to take a look back, but also talk about our plans in the upcoming year and hopefully later on as well.
And I'm back. So excited to be back. Did you guys have a good holiday and stuff?
Gosh, it already feels like such a long time ago, to be honest.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, man. Yeah, it was good. I was with my family and stuff on the East Coast for a while.
Avoiding the ice storm here.
Yeah, missed it completely, actually. Left 2 days before it started, saw insane videos of Seattle having an absolute snow meltdown, and then came back when it was clear and sunny again.
It's like you planned it.
Yeah, got lucky. So what's something that you're excited about, Ginger, in the next couple months?
Well, for one thing, I feel like we're just kind of getting into a good rhythm with this. It almost feels like it's easy. I don't know if anyone thought this, but yes, starting a podcast is kind of scary. Doing any kind of thing, project, whatever, and showing people, even though we're designers and that's our job, I think it's still scary. But now it feels a little like there's a game plan every time. We kind of know what works, what doesn't work. You get used to it too, so I'm excited just for that to feel comfortable and get better.
Mm-hmm.
I think we already have some cool guests lined up, so excited to talk to some more people. I didn't realize how diverse of backgrounds the podcast would sort of cover, and I've already learned a lot. So that's just going forward. I know to expect that, and that's exciting. What about you guys?
Not to have too much of a teaser, but when I was thinking about moments that were really great in conversations so far this year, I was realizing that I was a fair amount of them, I was thinking about just these pre-interview kind of meetings that we do with guests. And I was like, okay, well, that won't make any sense to the audience, but it made me feel excited about the conversations that we're going to have in the next couple months, because already just in our very casual chats with these people, they've made an impact on the way that I'm doing my day-to-day work and thinking about my career and things like that. So
yeah, it really sticks with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn a lot of things, and also your perception changes when you get to know someone personally. You might know someone from social media or following their work on Behance or seeing them on conferences. And then you have this chat and you realize that those are just all great people and everyone is different. And usually you wouldn't guess what is behind the facade of professional portfolio work that you're used to see all around.
Yes, design professionals whose work that you see online are real people. You can talk to them.
It makes me think of that really silly column that's just stars, they're just like us, it feels it feels very oh, these other professionals are just quite similar to us. I mean, I think what's cool about this podcast is that we all do have experience, but we've also set out to do it with the understanding that we are relatively early in our career, and we're hoping that by talking to people that are at a similar level as us or more seasoned designers, we can learn a lot from them in the process too. So I think it's been encouraging to find out that, yeah, we are on track. We have a lot in common. We're already having pretty similar thoughts and motivations to the way that we work. I've found that really, a boost, that we're doing a good job.
I just want to remind you that then when we were recording our very, very first tryout, before it even went to pilots, we said that we're starting the podcast to get better jobs. So our professional connections are definitely going up with every guest.
Yes, they do. I mean, that's undeniable. That's why, lots of people are in any sort of volunteer connection role. But I guess what's so crazy about this to me is just that it feels really authentic and really like it has depth. The type of professional connections that people tell you should make, that don't feel somehow like you're drawing out too much demand from a relationship that doesn't have the support for it. Like I think that mostly we're just building these relationships that can really support like our authentic questions about the changes we want to make and whatnot.
But yeah, in terms of like the type of networking that this essentially is, not to bag on conferences, like they say that you go to a conference to meet other professionals and you network, and we certainly do, and that was definitely the case at this past IDC and will probably be the case at Women in Design Deep Dive in Chicago.
Ooh.
You just don't have an hour and a half to sit down and talk with someone. Like, yeah, there's the lunch times. Maybe you can snag a seat with someone and talk between bites of food, but it's way different than going super in-depth. Even just the privacy of a Zoom room, I think, you can really dig deep into some stuff in a way that you can't in a loud room with hundreds of people that are excited and probably drinking too much coffee. Those serve their purpose. It's just that this is a little different. And when you talk to someone and you have actually something, it's a talking point to say, this is a podcast. Here's what we've talked about before with other people. You just get a lot to draw off of. And conversationally, if you struggle at all, then you have a lot of material to use, and someone wants to connect with that. I don't know if I'm the only one that wants to use a crutch like that, but I'll take whatever I can get.
I don't know if it's a crutch. I mean, it's like a real conversation, but I have been impressed at how enthusiastic pretty much everybody we've interacted with about this has been. Like, yeah, we're not getting a lot of no's. We're getting a lot more enthusiasm than I think we were when we were planning slightly less specific events. And I think that makes sense. Margaret, I want to ask you like a really awesome moment interviewing and then like a moment interviewing that you were just sort of like, oof, that's not quite what I meant to have happen.
That's the second part of question is quite difficult. But like, what was the most exciting part? I must say that for me, the most excitement came probably from the first episode with the guest, with Monica, because she was awesome personality to start with her. Because some people are like, I don't know, like too professional or they need time to warm up. And Monica was right off the bat making jokes, reminding us how her mom didn't want her to go to the design school, how she was figuring out what the design really is. It was my great experience. When did it not go well?
Or maybe just like, what's a thing that you learned from, like just sort of some pitfall in the interviewing style that you're like, oh, I'm going to do it differently now that I've tried this out?
Yeah, I think the biggest learning was how to keep conversation casual and like how not to give people too much information of what we want to hear about. Because sometimes I had an impression that they were so excited and prepared themselves so well that they will just go and start monologue, like answering every question before we even managed to ask it on the line, just because I got to mention it in the email before, just to make it like easier for them to see from what they can pick and choose. And sometimes someone just starts and goes with everything potentially could be a talking point.
I think it's definitely a win when we manage to break through, like the very professional, here are the things that I want to make sure that I say, and like are able to kind of disarm somebody into a response that goes a little beyond what they were imagining they might want to cover. That's really challenging, but that's definitely a goal that I want more and more.
It's so interesting because I totally feel that it is a user research skill. Like, we have to do this so much at work, talking to people that are a bit guarded and they don't really want to tell you everything. They don't want to be 100% honest.
So much.
Believe it or not,
yeah.
I don't know how much user research you guys do, but users like don't want to hurt your feelings. And they're afraid to tell you criticisms or like what's not working. So sometimes you'll have to like observe them. They'll make a face or something just looks challenging in their hands and press them about it, but in a way that's like, you definitely don't want to lead them. You don't want to phrase something in a way that's like they're going to answer how you predict. You really have to try to like keep it blank and neutral. And maybe we don't have to do that so much with this, but again, like you said, keeping it natural, keeping it casual, and drawing out sort of warmth and friendliness in someone because they feel comfortable with us. It's a new skill or a new side of that skill to cultivate outside of design as, I guess, a podcaster for real.
Yeah. You know, when we interview, I've never correlated that, but when we interview kids in particular about handle feedback in baseball, there are like so many layers of them being very concerned about getting it wrong. Like they really, really, really don't want ever to tell us that they don't like something, which is funny because sometimes we're trying to pick an option, right? So it's fine for them to not like one of them. Then their parents are often there and they're like looking over at their parents a lot to kind of see if they're like doing the right thing. Obviously their peers are like super impactful, but also if we like pull them away so they're really isolated from all the other kids, and we would hopefully get more like pure feedback, they get so nervous that then they just don't really talk to us. So it is this like juggling act where we are trying generally to have like a couple testers there and like have one of the testers just like chat with the other kid so that we can talk to the one about scores. And I think adults don't really grow out of that, you know, like we get a little bit better at masking it, but there's still this huge element when interviewing people, even our guests who like, we know many of them, you know, they're super creative, independent thinkers. We're like, there's a perceived right answer or like a way to be the most winning. And yeah, it's challenging even for adults to like relax through that, you know?
Yeah. And we're trying to totally do away with that there's no right answers to a ton of this stuff. There's just whatever works for you and whatever makes you comfortable and whatever you can offer to the world that is probably needed because someone else probably goes through that. But side note, wow, I have not had to think about designing products for kids since like school. Kids and digital multimeters. It's not really a thing.
Yeah. Maybe this was a good segue for me to ask you, what did you think will be the most challenging part when we started the pod and how it turned out?
I can answer that first. I kind of thought that the editing would like kill me more than it does. Not that it's not hard. It's a thing. But I think that actually organizing, like a step back from that, just structuring what we're doing, the logistics of also setting up a meeting that aligns with like, you know, at least 4 people. These things are really hard, even when we're all virtual. We're not like meeting face to face in a way that was like more stressful than I thought. I guess I didn't think I would stress about it.
Yeah, if we've never said it on the podcast before, Ginger does our editing and she's a designer, not like a sound engineer. So huge props for learning that enormous skill. Thank you so much. You're very talented at it.
I feel like we're going to have some listeners who are like, oh my God, I can tell it's shit. And then other people are going to be like, oh, that's so cool.
No wonder. All right, well, start your own podcast then, or maybe join our team if you want. Like, no problem. We'll take you. I thought it would be hard to schedule it. I didn't know if this was going to be a thing that we could actually keep up. I think I was a little bit more skeptical of like if people would take us seriously. And yeah, like I said, we've had a lot of people that think this is valuable. We've had audience members that think it's valuable and guests that like are really willing to be involved with us. I mean, definitely the first few were taking a little bit of a gamble on how it would go, and very grateful that they did. But yeah, it's not been challenging to find people that believe in this as a concept and think that we're capable of doing it. And having our schedule kind of be full and ongoing has been really cool. I'm pretty proud of us for that.
Yeah, I always thought that it will be hard to find enough people to talk to, and also to have different type of conversation with every person, because we don't want to keep repeating the same question, like, okay, so how was your design career? How was at school? And even though we kind of do talk to every person about it, it always takes different angle, and all the episodes are about very different things. And I think, it's one of the reasons why we kept going, because it wasn't repetitive. Mm-hmm. I was afraid that we will be basically making up ideas for episodes and we will run out of them. But no, we get to talk to someone, we find something super interesting about them, ask about it, go from there, learn a lot about their choices and career and ups and downs as we talk.
Yeah. You know, because also the reason there's enough guests is there's way more women doing this than we would like be led to believe. There's actually, every time we have a meeting and we're like planning out guests, I get so excited about that entire page of women's names that are all badass, that are all, you know, in contact with us. And it's really exciting. You know, it is a lot harder than I thought is naming the episodes.
Coming up with titles.
Every time. Yeah.
Well, but now we kind of established it. Certain way of naming them.
Do you feel like there's a formula?
Yeah, I like it. I think we should keep doing it. I don't want to just go back to the names of the guests because I think it's kind of funny to have to come up with something. But yeah, sometimes it's tricky.
There's a sort of self-consciousness about naming, because we name it, right? And we come up with the episode description and summary or whatever, but we don't consult the guest. So there's a little bit of like, what if they don't like that? Yeah. But no one said anything.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I'm like close enough with Anna that I could put a swear word in her episode title. Do we want to talk about some favorite moments from different guests? What's a good one that you have on deck, Ginger? You're the most familiar with our episodes.
Gosh, a lot of my favorite moments haven't necessarily actually been released in the episodes, but they come from some of the discussions and debriefs. Those get cut down, but I still have them. I have listened to them. They're saved for a rainy day, I guess. But, cool. You know, I think a couple of my favorites or our greatest hits right now, learning about Anvil's process, concepting and then swapping, building each other's concept. We hadn't heard that come up before, and it seems like a great idea. That's a cool way to keep things fresh and to do things in a two-person studio, keeping things very equal and 50-50. Mm. I've also really enjoyed, I didn't get to be in on that conversation with Lindsay and talking a lot about the ways to step back from work or figure out how to make it work better in your life as a whole. That was covering some stuff that I don't think we had ventured into as much, but it's super topical. And it's something that I think about myself a lot. So hearing her take on that, I think, was just educational for me.
Yeah. Lindsay and Anna both had this really, really holistic way of looking at design as just being like the way that they like move through the world to create more equity and more like value. I mean, I think Lindsay does a good job of like drawing a line around work so that it is not coming into the rest of her life, but still it seems like they carry the same like thinking in and out of the stuff that is for career and the stuff that is for them. And yeah, so thoughtful. I think that's definitely a value system that I identify with, and it was really encouraging to me to see some people that are doing it successfully and like also finding success with it. Like they've found companies where that's supported and it flourishes, you know?
I think what I really like is when people don't hesitate to admit they, for example, got laid off and had to start from scratch. I like how Linda basically admitted that amidst COVID, she lost her position and she just decided, what else can I do? And prepared the career path for herself in such difficult circumstances. Same Lindsay. She also didn't have it easy with like being always in a secure position, and she talks about it. And she even didn't hesitate to talk about how not well paid she was and how it was like job to pay apartment, not necessarily to make a world a better place.
Yeah, and we'll see how that's affected actually here with the pay transparency thing, because it's starting to roll out, right, with the job postings. I don't know if you guys have been looking at new job postings.
How does that work?
It's like a pay range usually, but I've noticed some sketchy bullshit, like places saying the pay is $0 so that they don't have to say it or something. I don't even know how they get away with that. I wonder if you could tell on them.
That's insane. Okay. Cool.
But yeah, maybe it's going to start to give places an idea and people an idea of what they can ask for.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I'm so tempted to talk about. Let's just say we have a cool conversation with somebody that is very financially savvy coming up.
Yes.
And we're excited to help you guys get more knowledge about that. I think that's going to be huge. Because, yeah, designers just like, I think when we think about the financial element of our job, it sort of is just like in a secondary nature, or like a, you know, that we should just be so motivated by having some beautiful creative outlet.
I think it's an art thing. Yeah, it's a creative thing. Like, you can't admit that you make money off this. It's the sellout mindset. If you are successful, you've sold out. It's not art. It's bad, or it's like shitty, and you make it for the man or something.
Even though you get so much grief in art school. I mean, at UW, right? Like the design school is in the art school, and we are just like the sellout kids the whole time. And the art students are so bitter about it. It's not how I think about design at all. I mean, we've talked about this, but I certainly didn't pick it because it's like a more lucrative form of art. I think design and art are totally different. But yeah.
I also don't think that way about artists. Like, hey, you eat, you put a roof over your head.
Yeah.
I mean, my partner's a musician, so it's also like, yeah, please go make money.
True. You don't have to be suffering for this to be like true beauty or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to die for it.
It's true. I think that Andrea talked about working on multiple continents in a really interesting way. Like, I just liked thinking about the constraints that come up in different groups of people, right? And how you have to like design for different body sizes and things like that, or maybe just preferences. I think she had a really good way of just keeping it all level. Like, she seems like she's been able to navigate a bunch of different projects in a bunch of different areas, and like, I don't know how to phrase this quite right. Not like over or underthink it. Like, take it seriously, but not, yeah.
Yeah, it was really neutral, like a very medically oriented way of thinking, I think, right? That you just need this thing for accommodating medicine and that kind of science. I don't know, just take the biases out of it, she was really good at that.
Yeah, I remember there were things like how the system is different in EU and US in terms of like who's using the machine, right? Is it like the doctor who does the scan and talk to the patient, or is it a technician who comes, uses the machine, and now later the results go to the doctor who never uses the user interface on the machine, and how it had to be designed in the way that both are basically their primary user, because they are just different locations, but the same product. This was insightful. Like, yeah, she's a really great designer in terms of being able to keep up with all these requirements.
Yeah, it's a really complicated type of design process and type of product. I mean, I can relate, I think, but it's still not to the same extent, in the medical product field.
It's so crazy how specific your knowledge gets as a designer.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever think you would know so much about multimeters?
I mean, I still feel like I don't know enough because I'm surrounded by all of the people, in this area that know the most about it.
Yeah, that's true. That's very easy to lose sight of. But like, if you explained how those work to us, we would make it probably 5% into your knowledge before being like, wow, we have so much less understanding of what you're talking about than you do.
If I explained it to you, I could make it all up and you wouldn't know.
That's true. That's true.
Wow, way to just break down my trust in you, Ginger. Thanks.
I have to keep you on your toes.
Maybe we look forward into the year and some of the goals that we have. I think a big one that we've started talking about is being really specific with the type of design topics that we talk to guests about. So bringing in a variety of professionals that have like a broader range and with some specific topics that we would really like to cover. So, talking to somebody who's in education, talking to somebody who is a CMF designer, talking to somebody that's at a big consultancy, maybe having a little bit of the conversation of like consultancy versus in-house, although I know that that's a pretty common conversation in the design world. So, maybe taking an angle on it. What are some other ones that you all want to make sure we hit?
Something I'm looking forward to is to start talking to people who don't work in the US. We had like international guests already, like Andrea, Anna is Filipino, but they all are based in the US right now and they spent big chunk of their careers here.
Yeah.
We want to also have people who are from a little bit different side of the world and do industrial design, which isn't exactly how it's being taught in the US and how some companies, especially on the West Coast, tend to work in a similar way.
Agreed. Oh, also, I guess like hiring, like design adjacent jobs of like how designers can grow or get hired or develop basically in a company as opposed to only designers themselves, and people that are in managerial positions making decisions like that.
Yeah, like I think that we can get pretty practical in a way through our guests to offer the start of a tool set. Someone can say, I learned about this way of going about hiring or going about cultivating talent at the company or talking about this certain thing, and they can start to try that in their own interactions and career.
Yeah. I didn't think of this until you mentioned it earlier in the episode, but I think it'd be sort of cool to talk to people that have a really specific user group they have to interview, like kids or older folks or, people with disabilities or varying abilities, things like that.
Yeah, and that as a designer, like when you go to that workplace, you probably don't necessarily have the specific skill set of how do you do usability testing or interview them or shadow them. It's a little bit different for every group, and you just have to probably pick it up on the job.
Yeah, I also think just more user research a little bit in general would be interesting. Sometimes designers are the ones doing it, but it's often, like strategy and research separated out. And I think it's a really interesting area of design.
It's such a big job. Like if you have to do research and the whole design process and then even like sustain products after that, it can be kind of overwhelming. Like there's so much that you get out of research that isn't just for the specific product that you're working on. If you're in-house, a lot of those insights probably can be captured and used in the future across other products that you're working on or just down the line or road mapping. And if you don't have enough time and resources, you're just going to lose a lot of that. It's like just sand through your fingertips.
Yeah. Though it's really important, in my opinion, to have the research have the same goals as the design team. Like I think that research that's more pushed by the business or marketing side can be pretty tricky because it's not necessarily the type of, user issues that we would focus on.
Bad research exists.
Well, research with different goals. I mean, it's bad from a design perspective. I think it's hard to say that it's bad from a business perspective, right? But
that's
not the way that I want to be.
Bad research from like a scientific perspective. You can actually see people construct a study that's like, true. Oh, you did that so that you would receive a specific set of data. Or like even the way that screening is done for participants. If you don't do it right, then you totally skew the results, and you can tell before you synthesize everything, like, oh, this is going to be skewed or it's not. And sometimes you don't have a choice, right? Like you just cast your net and you didn't get the users that you needed to. And maybe that means you need to go out again, or you don't have time and you start making guesses. It just is what it is.
Yeah, true. One more idea for a topic we could cover is maybe like somebody at Offsite or a similar program that is specifically targeting how people in their careers like pick up new skills or become like a slightly different branch of designer. I think that that's something that we talk to designers directly about, but not necessarily to somebody that's like trying to field that desire or feeling for lots of designers.
Right. Did you hear that, Offsite folks? Were you listening?
Offsite! Shout out!
Get in touch.
If you listen to us, we want to hear from you. Funny.
I would be also excited if we maybe bring someone working more with fashion. And we're talking to one person already. I keep thinking about footwear because we are so close to Portland and we could probably source amazing footwear designers. And this is just on the cross section of industrial design, graphic design, fashion. And I want to learn for myself about the craft.
But are we cool enough, Margaret? Are we cool enough to talk to a footwear designer?
It also comes to my mind that we should probably use the connections we have to Boeing and talk more about the aviation design. And maybe we could talk about car design.
Yeah, for sure. We will definitely interact with Teague more. I think especially as a Seattle-based podcast, that's like a Seattle institution that certainly deserves some airtime. They've done some great work. Yeah, the last thing, I think that sometimes this gets too much coverage on like women's focused groups, but we actually have not talked to anybody about parenthood yet, and it's relevant. So probably that will come up this year too, with some of our guests.
Starting the podcast, we said that we don't want to do it all about, how do you come back to work after having kids and all these typical issues, or like how to, like what facilities you even need when you come back from the parental leave. But like we did enough subjects, enough interviews about something completely different. Now I think I'm comfortable with bringing more of this stereotypical content because those are great stories. We have great guests and it's important to talk about it. And we're in the point of the development when we can do that. And no one would think that this is too cliche.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reason to avoid it sometimes is like because it's such a go-to and it doesn't really like maybe focus on the well-roundedness of a woman's career, and it doesn't happen as much to men, even if they have kids. But it is also in the well-roundedness of somebody's life. Choosing to be a parent and how it impacts your career choices is a pretty major impact. So, yeah, I definitely think we could talk about it.
I was going to say, though, that it doesn't have to be so one-sided in terms of covering a topic about becoming a parent. Why wouldn't it be an option for men who often now are starting to get parental leave from their companies to take an extended period of leave, perhaps even more than what the company gives, and they do just want to leave and then spend a lot of time at home with their child. There's a lot of good reasons to do that, and then think about career a little later and go to somewhere new.
Yeah.
And how might one go and do that? Maybe the story doesn't have to be that different for men and women.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be game to have that be the interview we have with a man. That'd be great. Oh, one other idea, guys, is that we want to have some, the monthly guest interview is something we plan to stick with, but maybe we'll also spice things up with a few sillier or just more like chatty topics from the three of us here and there. So Margaret has some Valentine's Day episode. We'll see if we get to.
But it's too late for that. Maybe next year.
You can still talk about it.
Okay, yeah,
we could just have you.
You didn't think it's so funny, but I thought it will be.
I think it will be funny.
The Valentine's special on dating industrial designers. I want to hear all about trying to get apartments together and agree on any furnitures, picking up a vacuum cleaner when everyone has different opinion what's the most important part of its design. Also doing portfolio together through like 3 a.m. or getting to know each other in design schools, which were like very different type of education. Instead of going to frat parties, people were just sitting in a studio.
Yeah.
I love how Margaret's so ready to talk about it, but she's also like, I need a year to plan it.
She wants more people involved, and you and I are honestly probably breaking the mold of not dating other designers. So
Perhaps.
we can't help you, Margaret. You just need one buddy. Just pick a friend that has had this experience.
I need to gather better group of people. But also maybe we will do anniversary episode. It will be in July when we will hit a 1 year mark.
Woohoo!
Halfway there.
That is true. Exactly halfway there. It's good that we kept going and we have more listeners than only our mom and dad.
Or they're really active.
Oh my gosh, just playing it all the time.
On the loop.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, maybe it's worth to talk a little bit how we even started.
Yeah.
And how do you do a podcast? Because we didn't know. We kind of like learned everything on the go.
True. Yeah. I would say, Ginger, you've been instrumental in the logistics of like equipment and setup and software and editing. Luckily, you're not dating a designer, but you are dating a musician.
It helps.
So yeah, why don't you actually talk a little bit about like what it takes to start a podcast from the like nuts and bolts side of it?
In a way, it's surprisingly accessible, and everyone who's built out their home office for work from home, or if anyone's doing streaming and those kinds of things, you've probably already found that it's actually relatively easy to get going. And then in terms of just like preparing something as a monthly release, the editing tool that I use is free. It took me a little while to learn, but nothing crazy. I think just being organized about like, we record this and this is what's going to happen during the recording and this is our timeline to polish it and all of the other things that go with it, like visual assets and a lot of those things that you guys are taking care of, to just sort of wrap it up in a bow. It's just keeping track of a few moving parts, right? Over the course of about a month, or depends on when we record during the cycle. So sometimes it's a little quicker, but that's the other nice thing about having done this a few times. You remember everything you need. Oh, I need those photos. Oh, I need to write this copy. And then it just comes together really quick.
True.
More important, I think, is just feeling the confidence of like, we have something to talk about and people want to hear these things. We have a guest to speak to. We have their story to tell and share. And having that imperative kind of helps you make it. Anyone can record anything, but knowing that someone else wants to listen to it, I think you need that driving force. And I just heard it because there were so many things that we talked about in terms of what kind of content we were going to make for WID in general, in terms of events, virtual speakers, live speakers, whatever. And all of those things kind of tipped me off to like, there's a lot of chatter. We can capture this here and then take some people along with us along the way. And that has really Oh, that was a good prediction on my part, I think.
Nice job. Yeah. I think from the like people side of things, we have grown really comfortable talking to each other. And so that was a really good foundation for knowing that, whether or not we managed everything perfectly with a guest, we could do this part and, that would be worthwhile. And then I think from the guest standpoint, we started very much thinking we were always going to have a event and then have this episode that was like a follow-up to the event that built off of it. And I think that like gave us kind of the security to start because we felt like there would already be this big established thing that we were pulling from. It only took us like one episode to realize that we don't need that.
We actually abandoned it really quickly. Yeah.
Which is pretty great. And I think definitely the flow of the episodes was much better once we were just doing it all in real time with the guest. The other main change that Margaret already alluded to earlier was, I think for both our security and also the security of the first few guests, like understanding that this was like a pretty legitimate endeavor, we wrote really thorough outlines, did a lot of research and had everything like pretty mapped out. And it has taken some confidence building on our part to minimize that outline more and more, still do the same thoughtfulness and like intention on our side, but have the guest, ease into trusting us to have that conversation be a little bit more organic. Also, through some feedback from a friend of the podcast, we have also needed to like lean into the confidence of being some of the people in the room that like really do get to talk and have an opinion and like share our point of view and not just rely exclusively on the guest being the one that carries all of the weight of the conversation. So I think that those things are definitely like learning processes that have happened over the year. And then, yeah, the last logistic I can think of is just these meetings beforehand with guests is like crucial to figure out what you're going to talk about and figure out like who they are and build a little bit of like comfort. But that the better we get at this, the less I think that those meetings will have in them, because I think that, sometimes we realize that 30-minute meeting we had ahead of time is actually like full of content that we would really like to include. It already had a lot of the meat of their like main feelings about design, their main goals, their main like, experiences. And then we don't want to be like repeating that when we're actually recording them.
Top level takeaway. It's okay to change your plans when you make a podcast.
Yeah,
that's
we
valid.
haven't changed that much actually. Because like sometimes when you think how people pivot from the first episode to where they are later, we were pretty much, at least topics stayed the same. And we kept inviting guests. I thought that maybe we will be, because I thought we will not have always a guest to interview. So I thought we will be having more just three of us discussing something. But we had so many good people coming in and interested to sit down with us that so far it's always been a guest. And also always different topic came out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe because we talk to guests, like one thing to remember is even when we were only on like episode 3, someone was showing up and they were like looking for guidance to us. And it's like, okay, you are the ones that are making podcasts. I'm stressed here. I'm a guest. What should I be talking about? And even though we were like equally stressed and still wasn't sure how to handle it, we had to just sit straight and be like, okay, we are podcasters. We will tell you what to do. We will interview you. This is like totally legitimate business.
Maybe a little bit of fake it till you make it, yeah?
Pretty much. Because first we had to convince someone to come talk to us and someone agreed. And then we had to keep the straight face.
Yeah, no, they're very generous. I was going to say a bunch of suckers have been tricked into talking to us this year. I guess we love you so much. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful. That's really funny. Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything that you do, you need to just sort of get going and like figure it out as you go and like continue to trust that you're going to get better at it and that it's still like worth starting. I think that that's such an awesome lesson and something that I also would not be doing were this not a team of the three of us with two people that I really trust. It's been really cool to be able to push each other in moments when each one of us was having a little bit of hesitation or doubt, and like to continue to have somebody be the one that was feeling like they had direction or they had enthusiasm or whatever it was. So yeah, I definitely think teams help when you're scared to get something off the ground.
Absolutely. And I do think that authenticity or vulnerability aspect is part of what makes this scary, but it is also rewarded by the great response that we have from the listeners. But I also think to each other, just being this way, telling truths, venting sometimes, uncovering new discoveries, like doing that together that's a great friendship to have.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I would love this so much.
Yeah, I agree. It's really nice. Also, like, really, okay, now I think we can say this finally. Corey, I hope you're listening. We didn't think that National would like let this thing necessarily exist. We were sort of like, I don't know if this is allowed. This isn't really an event. We have our own branding, and I just like, if anybody from the IDSA leadership listens to this, I just want to say like that the support from them has been super cool and has been like definitely helpful, definitely encouraging. I feel really buoyed up by how enthusiastic they are about what we're doing. And the fact that, yeah, at this point, you know, they gave all of us recognitions in the past couple of years, little awards. So it's cool. Definitely on board. You know what I can't wait for?
What?
I'm gonna make Margaret hang up on us. But someday when we are thriving sufficiently to have some fucking merch. Can't wait.
I'd wear it.
Tell us if you would wear a t-shirt. We want to know.
I would wear a t-shirt, but I would say what I always say. But who would be buying this?
My mom will look so good in our t-shirt.
Do it for mom.
Anyway, cool guys. Well, it's been a really fun half a year of podcasting with you. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to keep doing this.
Yes, me too. I really love it, but it's also a big chunk of hard work. Maybe more than I expected at first, but it is rewarding. It is rewarding, and now we are like people who have inside jokes, and you as an audience may not understand everything, but we really are having a lot of fun with every recording.
Did you really think you're just gonna like talk for an hour and then be totally off the hook for the rest of the work, Margaret?
I do work.
Yeah, totally. Ginger, you can do everything.
No, please.
Just kidding. You do plenty. And we I didn't give a shout out to Margaret for all of the awesome branding and website and everything that we have. Plus the push to do show notes. Yeah, we're growing. We got goals. If you have not been to our podcast, it's beyondraypodcast.com, and it's beautiful, and you can find a lot more info about us over there.
Yeah, one day Margaret just launched that on us. She was like, go check out this draft. And we were like, oh shit, this is awesome.
I was probably procrastinating from a vacuum cleaning or something like that. Or maybe my actual job.
I like procrastinating my actual job by doing this job. It's super fun. It's a great outlet. We want to wrap.
Yeah. Well, this is really cool. I'm really excited for what we do for the rest of the year.